Hello, and in today's video we're going to be looking at how to manage, how to store, to back up and transfer your AiM data. So if you're anything like me, you may have been gathering data across devices for many years now. And again, if like me, you probably just plug in a computer to a device like a Dash or to an AiM Solo, you download it, it appears in RayStudio Analysis, and you move on. But slowly over time, certain things start to happen. We may want to transfer that data to another machine. We may want to actually back it up because eventually this data gets to be huge and cumbersome and difficult to be able to manage. And the other thing is we want the safety and comfort knowing that all the data that we've gathered over time is somehow backed up and securely stored. And so that's what we're going to focus on today and really make sure that we're managing our data as appropriately as possible. Now, in my view, AiM data falls into three key areas. The first is your session data, the data that you actually download. The second is your user profiles in terms of how you actually look at that data online. And then the third, should you have them, is looking at the math channels and being able to make sure you've got all of your ways of being able to custom view that data. Those are the three key areas that we want to be able to back up. So to be able to manage your data, it's really important to know where it's housed on your computer. Now, depending on the type of device you will use a different software to be able to download that data. And so the most important thing to know right now is that the AiM software will always download a copy of that data onto your local drive of the computer. I can show that because when I open up this file and I go into the C drive here, you'll find a folder called AiM Sports. This should be on most of your machines unless you've nominated a different location to load that AiM software. So if I click here, you'll notice that this shows me all of the software that I have from AiM. I have RayStudio 2, RayStudio 3, RayStudio 3 Beta, and I actually have GPS Manager on here as well. Now, if I've got an older device, I've used RayStudio 2 to download it. It's the software that looks like this. And so if I go into the RayStudio 2 folder and click on Data, this is where the data would be housed. Now, I don't have any on here because I don't use RayStudio 2 on this computer. But if you do, this is where all your files will be housed. Similarly, if you use one of the more modern devices and use RayStudio 3 to download your data, you're going to click in this folder and you'll find it's an extra step, it's in user, and you'll find a folder called data, and if you click there, this is where your data will be housed. Now mine's sorted by date, and I'll explain that in just a minute, but if I double click here, you can see that that's where all the data is housed. Now, one of the things that you may be thinking about is that, well, this gives me the opportunity to be able to manage the data, and you'd be absolutely right. If I were to right click on here, I could copy this, I could put it onto an external drive, I could move it to a new computer, I could put it in the cloud. This is where I could actually manage in bulk a lot of the data that I've downloaded over a period of time. So that's really, really important to be able to know where the data is housed. There is another way of being able to manage your data in terms of moving it around as well, and that's in the actual RayStudio Analysis software itself. Now, the reason that this is really useful to be able to do it here is that you can select, pick and choose which type of data you want to be able to keep, to export. It's also very useful for being able to understand just the complexity of all the actual files themselves. Sometimes you'll go in here and see that there's a lot of files that have only got one lap. That's because it may have taken a snapshot or may have recorded the opening you going actually out from the paddock to the pits or onto the grid. And so this just gives you a lot more choice and control in terms of what you look at. So for example, if I wanted to be able to take this data, I just select these files here. I could click on Export Test and I can choose wherever I want to be able to put them. So for example, if I said I want to put them on my desktop, I can go ahead, it says it's created the folder. And if I actually go here, I can now see that that data is housed there. And if I double click, there are all the data files. And so I can move that folder anywhere I want to be able to back it up and store it. And so that's the first way of being able to actually manage and look at your data, is to be able to look at the sessions and be able to say, do I want to be able to go into the actual folder structure and manage it there? Or do I want to be able to manage these particular files based upon what I want to pick and choose in the RayStudio Analysis software? Now, I did mention that you can use RayStudio 3 to be able to manage the data in a more efficient and a more customizable way. And I think that's really important. Ray Studio 2 with the older devices didn't give you as much flexibility, but Ray Studio 3 gives you a ton of options. And if you set these up right, you can actually set this up so that it actually allows you to be able to download and back up the data in a far more efficient manner. And so if I go to Ray Studio 3, I click up here in the top left, you can see there's an area called data download. So if I click there, now what it's going to do is it's going to give me an option of not only where the data is downloaded to, but how I want that folder structure and the file names to look. Now, there'll be an additional video you can look at here, which I'll link to, which will give more information about this. But it's important to note that if you are someone like me who wants to be able to use the data on multiple computers, you don't want necessarily the hassle of constantly having to back up your data. One of the things you can do is you can click on change here, and you can actually nominate a location. So if I clicked on OneDrive here, I could nominate a location where that data is actually going to be backed up. Now what will happen is it'll download the data at the track when I'm probably not connected to the internet, but the moment I do reconnect, the files will sync and then they're available in the cloud for me to be able to access whenever I want them, plus they're backed up. So that's a very useful feature. The second thing is you also noticed on my Ray Studio 3 download that they were sorted by date, and that's because I have this ticked. Depending on what you want, you can sort them by other metrics. You can sort them by the racer, the vehicle, the championship, any type of aspect you need, depending on your preference. But by being able to nominate the folder structure, it makes it easier to be able to find that data. But again, this just gives you the opportunity of being able to get the data into a format that makes it easier for you to be able to manage. And I think this is very important if you want to be able to get your data into a position where it's either somewhere where you can find it, somewhere where you know it's going to be backed up, and somewhere where you can actually go and manage it. So that's the second part of being able to manage and work with your data. Now the last thing we need to think about in relation to your session data and how to back up and manage that is, let's say you want to be able to bring your data back into Ray Studio Analysis to be able to work with. So to be able to do that, you need to be in Ray Studio Analysis. And here is the test database page. Now, all I need to do is click on Import Test, and I can go and I can find data. Now, one of the things that I did as part of this demonstration is that I actually have got a thumb drive here. This is an external drive that's available. And what I've got on here is some data that I want to be able to import. So I could just double click on here, find the folder, and I can bring those in and import them into the software. Now, at this point, I'm not going to do this because this is something that you should not do. You can if you want to, but what this would mean is that every time I wanted to be able to access these files, we would need to make sure that that thumb drive was always connected to this computer. And this applies if you're bringing in a few files, if you're bringing in every single file that you've backed up, if you're moving data into your actual computer to be able to analyze, you must put that data in a location which will be permanently located. And so to be able to do that, what we're actually going to do is we're going to cancel that. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back into File Explorer, and we're going to go here. So I've got this thumb drive and I've got this bunch of files that are here. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to click on copy. Then I'm going to go back to the hard drive of the computer, the C drive, and I've put a folder here called File for AiM Demo. If I double click there and I paste them in there, now what I'm able to do is that data has been moved from the thumb drive to the hard drive. I can now pull the thumb drive out of the computer and not worry about it. And so what I can then do is, now when I'm going to import the test, I can then go to the computer, I can scroll down, hit the C drive, File for the Demo, double click that and load these. And one of the things you'll notice is only bringing in one file anyway, which is the reference file, the DRK. It will look for all the other data located now on the C drive, and it will mean that it was always able to find your data. And this is where people get a little bit of a pickle sometimes with the data, is that what generally tends to happen is that they take the thumb drive, the external hard drive out, or it's in the cloud, they're not connected to the internet, it's not available, and all of a sudden now they're in a position whereby they cannot access the data that they need. So the word of warning here, or the word of caution, and the guidance is to always be able to import that data into a location onto the hard drive and then be able to access it. After you've done that, Ray Studio Analysis will find that data no matter where you've put it on your computer. But at the same time, do not put it on anything that you're actually going to disconnect from the PC permanently and won't be with you when you need to access this data. So now that we've looked at being able to manage session-based data, or the data that you actually download from the device to be able to use, analyze and understand that data and how to manage it, the next thing we focus on are user profiles and math channels, the other two key components of being able to work and analyze the data. So here in Ray Studio Analysis, I have a session open, and up here on the top left-hand side, I have user profiles. This will give me a series of user profiles that I can use to be able to analyze the data of the car, and I've built these up over time, some related to iRacing, some related to Formula Ford in this instance, which is what I'm driving at the moment. And so what I need to do is be able to back these up. So I generally tend to do this once a month. Unfortunately, this is not something you can tell Ray Studio Analysis to be able to point to, and it backs it up in the cloud. This is something that you manually have to do on a regular basis. And so I try and do it once a month, which means that if I change anything, I'm only ever going to lose 1 month's worth of work if I forget to do it and I lose my computer or something gets corrupted. To do it, it's relatively straightforward. You go up into File, you click here in terms of Export User Profiles, you nominate anywhere on your computer you need this to be able to done. So I'm going to say Desktop, and here I'm going to say James User Profiles, September 2020. And then I'm going to click on Save. And so if I now go into the desktop, you'll notice that there will be some additional files. Now James User Profile shows up, and that's available to be able to upload anytime. Now, if you want to be able to upload those, all you need to do is go to File, Import User Profiles, find that location and click on Open. And it will bring those user profiles back in, so you will never lose those. So my recommendation is to be able to do this once a month, just to make sure that you've always got a record of all that effort, because these are not easy to set up. They do take some time. Now, when we think about math channels, now math channels and user profiles go hand in hand. Typically, your user profiles will reference math channels as to how you've set the data up. And so what you want to be able to do is click up here, click on math channels. See, I've got a whole selection that's available here. If I click in general, because that's the tab where I want to be able to keep all of my math channels all the time, all I need to do is be able to click on Export Set. I'm going to go in and say Desktop again, please, and I'm going to say File Name, and I'm going to say James Math Channels 2020. I'm going to click on Save, and the same thing's applied. Now you've got these here. Now the math channels has appeared. Now what's interesting is that you don't need to have these permanently located on your computer. All you need to do is upload them once, and they'll be kept as part of the Ray Studio Analysis instance on your actual computer. And so it's not like the session-based data. But that being said, if you want to be able to back these up in the same location, back them up in the cloud, I usually back these up in the cloud for the very simple reason that I want to be able to keep consistency in my math channels and my user profiles, which means that no matter what machine I'm using, I can just download those particular files. And so if I need to now, I just need to go in here. I'm going to go back into math channels here. I'm going to click Import Set, which I'll probably do here. It'll tell me if you do this, you're going to overwrite the ones that are there. I'm fine with that. I'm going to click on this button here. I'm going to click on Open, and there they are, all available for me to be able to use. And so that's the simple process of being able to back up the user profiles and the math channels. But if you do those three consistently, which is the session data, the user profiles and the math channels, then you'll never be in a position where you're immediately ready to do your analysis at the track and you're like, oh, I just don't have that user profile. Then you've got to recreate it, never remember how you set it up. Similarly, you want the data that you have from historical sort of runs, you also want that data too. And so these are the aspects of being able to manage that data. So there you go. That's the backing up, transferring, and really make sure you're maintaining the data that you've built up over such a long period of time with your AiM devices and the AiM software. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you really want to, because there'll be a lot more content on the way. And if there's anything you'd like to see different, anything you didn't like about this video, please comment below so that we can actually do a better job next time. So thank you very much for watching.